Okay, let me grab my glasses. This is going to be a shorter session, just to uh, give you assurance. The second part is shorter, but less no less important. The handout you got has some of the quotes, has some of the things that we talked about in these notes. But I wanted to share with you guys before we get into part two. So important that we have spiritual expectations. Let me grab my glasses. Spiritual expectations of what God can do to heal us. Most recently, I've been doing a lot of research and spending time in recovery ministries and recovery 12-step programs, because what I have noticed in these environments is the incredible miracles that are experienced in these 12-step programs of people leaving addiction and life completely just destroyed, family, marriage destroyed, and yet they're able to recover and have a turnaround and the transformation that happens. But what I've noticed in the 12-step program is the spiritual reliance that only God could make them well. In fact, step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol or whatever the substance, that our lives had become unmanageable. In other words, only God can help me recover. Not a program, not education, not therapy, only God. And I think honestly, in our fellowship of churches, that just that humility, that reliance, that God can help us overcome our traumatic experiences, our past, but the effort that goes into it is daily. They emphasize time with God, meditation every morning, that you'll specifically ask, God, help me not to use today. And I've kind of adapted that in my own prayer life, has helped me not to be sinful today. Help me not to lose my patience. Help me not to, but to have a greater reliance on God, to have breakthroughs spiritually, because it's no difference, the destructive power of sin in our lives. So just wanted to mention that. And then these are two books that I want to recommend if you want to do deeper dives. Number one is in this whole area of trust. It came out 2023. Dr. Henry Cloud, you've probably heard of him. But incredible material. And this is all, leadership based, corporate leadership, but it's very useful in all settings, marriages, families. But he does his book on trust, simply titled Trust, is outstanding. A lot of examples of what we talked about today, and very thorough. The second one is the leadership model by Stephen Covey of Trust and Inspire. Some of the early material that I was using when I was talking about trust and building trust was The Speed of Trust. Yeah. That was the book before Trust and Inspire, The Speed of Trust. In that book, The Speed of Trust, there's I think at the end, towards the end, one of the later chapters, he talks about how to recover from broken trust. And those are the things, and Dr. Henry Cloud talks about that a lot, is how to overcome, how to recover from broken trust. Gotcha. Which is very, very useful. Because what I hate hearing and hate, people to be stuck and saying, you just got to get over it, bro.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's not helpful.
No, it's not.
Because, broken trust and trauma and hurt, particularly when it's at a family level, it's unique to everyone.
Yes.
And it's paralyzed. And so it's very important that we come in with humility, with empathy, so that people feel like, okay, I'm gonna go to work on this. spiritually. I need therapy, but I'm also gonna journal, write out, get into it. So I'll leave you with that. So we're gonna get into the handout.
Did you
Yes.
say the
come here.
Trust and Inspire book addresses broken or the Speed of Trust?
Speed of Trust.
Addresses
One of the later,
Trust.
one of the
Okay.
later chapters talks about,
Okay, thank you.
overcoming, broken trust. But also Henry Cloud does too in his book,
Okay, thank you.
very thorough. So let's get into the notes. Most of the stuff's not gonna be on the screen. Part 2 should be on the backside. And we're gonna talk about being trustworthy. This is huge because I'm making an appeal to you to trust again. What leadership needs to do and what we need to reciprocate is, I'm gonna be trustworthy. Okay? And I think that's what really can make a healthy trust culture is when everybody takes responsibility. If you're gonna give me trust, I'm gonna steward that trust. And what trustworthiness means does not mean perfection. In fact, one of the hard parts about being in a fellowship and a community is that people are gonna mess up. People are gonna,
Right.
being in a marriage, being in a family. When I went through my, marriage and family therapy program, I had to sit down with my 2 children and own a lot of stuff because I was not a great parent all the time. In fact, I didn't help my kids. I hurt my kids. And I had to sit down with them and tell them, I'm sorry for this, and then open the checkbook and say, what else did you see that you feel like you need to talk to me about? And that was very helpful, a lot of tears. But I'm very grateful for new beginnings because too many times people go to the grave and they didn't reconcile. I mean, that's very hurtful and paralyzing. So as we talk about being trustworthy, it means simply being worthy of trust. So what I'm going to ask you as leaders, when you're a steward of trust and being and committed to being trustworthy, is these 3 commitments. Number 1, I commit to do what I say, and I will do. And when I don't, I will tell you. In other words, if I make a commitment to you and I don't come through, and I know I didn't come through, you're the first one I'm going to talk to.
Yeah.
And just to be upfront, I appreciate the environment that I work in at Hope Worldwide because it is a very healthy environment of trust. But part of that is if I make a commitment to send an email or to deliver a gift proposal or whatever it is, if somebody asks me, if my supervisor asks me to do something and I don't come through, and I know I didn't come through, to go to him and say, hey, I'm sorry I didn't come through and I'll make sure I get it done today. But I acknowledge that I didn't do what I said. Okay, because that can undermine trust. But
Yep.
just that can help float trust some more. That we're communicating. Number 2 is I commit to not overpromise and underdeliver. My tendency as a leader, as an employee, as a husband, sometimes I overpromise. And I have to be very careful about that. Okay, because I like to tell people, hey, I'm going to save the world. No, you're not. Okay. You just need to do this. Okay. So sometimes we gotta, be honest with what we can or cannot do. And it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
I can only do this much. But if it looks like that's where things are headed, I'll tell you. If I know I'm not going to be able to come through. So this is all emphasizing trustworthiness means we're gonna be strong in communication. Okay, I'm going to give you updates. If you're leading a small group and you're going to make a commitment that we're going to meet and cover this material and you're getting behind, it's important to back up and say, hey, we're not going to be able to finish, or we're going to have to stretch it out or whatever. Just great communication.
Yep.
Number 3 is if you confront me about the gaps that I have created as a leader, I'm going to tell you the truth. In other words, in trustworthiness, if I'm a leader, I'm gonna give you an invitation to tell me where I'm not coming through. Okay? In the church world, this is what I've noticed over many, many, many years. We don't do a great job telling each other where we're not coming through.
Yeah.
And members have not received an open invitation to let leaders know, hey, I need you to tell me where I'm not coming through and where I'm not being what I need to be.
Mhm.
Okay? It's more like just, I'm going to be quiet and be faithful and loyal and whatever. I'm going to support you no matter what. That doesn't help leadership.
Right.
So I've gone around, and this second part, I've gone around to strong churches who are experiencing good trust levels, but to create a covenant where there's going to be great communication.
Amen.
In other words, if the leader is not delivering or if he's being insensitive, then I need you to tell me so that I can make the changes. So I'm giving you this invitation to communicate with me. Just that, I can think of so many church crises that have happened over the years that could have been averted if there were better communication.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If the leader would have said, I invite you to talk to me if you see something that I'm doing that is not helping the church, versus, no, we're just going to be faithful and support you no matter what. Because what happens is it's like a pressure cooker. It builds up and eventually it explodes.
Yeah.
And then leaders are caught off by surprise. They're like, what? I can't believe it. All this stuff you've been feeling and you haven't talked to me?
Yeah.
Well, number one, it's the leader's responsibility to create that open-ended communication. But two, it's the member's responsibility. Hey, this is my church too.
Yeah.
It's not the leader's church, it's God's church.
Yeah.
And I've got to steward it as well as a community group leader or as a small group leader.
Yes.
This is our church. We're in this together. So great communication. Okay, so in the notes, the bullet points. Harboring suspicion and mistrust will eventually poison the culture of your organization. I've seen this happen many times. There are things that grow and multiply in the dark.
Oof.
And there are things that grow and multiply in the light. The things that grow in the dark are generally unhealthy. Can you think of examples that grow in the dark? Mold, bacteria, fungus.
Cockroaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally not healthy. Exceptions may be carrots, potatoes.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Everything else is not good. Okay, so the point is, should I hold things in?
Yeah.
Even in the small group level, should I hold this in? Or should I talk about it? The things that, and then the third bullet point, when you choose not to trust and refuse to confront your concealed suspicion grows and poisons your attitude.
So
This has to do with protecting our hearts. Okay? And too often what we say is, well, I'm just going to have a good heart,
well,
but you don't get open. Okay? And that's not having a good heart. Sometimes you got to be honest and open in your relationships. Your attitudes about people in your organization are telegraphed. People know the consequences of confrontation are far less severe than the consequences of concealment.
mhm.
Okay, by nature, I am a conflict avoider. Okay, that's not a good thing to have as a strength. And it's not, about going around looking for conflict. Where can I start conflict? No, it's just a matter of, I'm not afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
Because I care about the organization. I care about the church. I care about our relationship enough to talk. And obviously when Ephesians talks about, speak the truth in
Oh,
love, that's huge.
Yep.
how we communicate our open feelings is giant. The consequences of confrontation are tangible, immediate, and impact only a few relationships in your church. So in other words, if we deal with it quickly, we can end it and we can start changing. But if it doesn't, guess what it does? It's like a virus. It
Yes.
spreads. And you're going to talk to somebody about it,
Yep.
but not the person you need to talk to about it.
So true. So true.
We have to establish these covenants that I'm going to be honest and open.
Yep.
And I think as leaders, we need to do a better job at creating a safe environment where you can talk to me.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to create that space where I want you to talk to me. I want you to tell me
Yes.
if I'm not coming through, if I'm not meeting the expectations that you have. And then we can have that conversation. Maybe your expectations are too high, et cetera, but we're talking. The consequences of concealment are tangible, long lasting, and impact every relationship in your church. Last one, we must learn as leaders to fear the consequences of concealment more than we fear the transparency of a culture built around trust.
Amen.
Those are huge points. As far as I want to preserve trust levels in our church. So for that reason, I'm going to speak up. And we're going to create better relationships, more open-end relationships. But the overriding environment and culture we want to have is one of trust.
Yep.
And I trust you enough, so therefore I'm gonna speak to you. Here's some reflection questions, and then we can open it up for some Q&A and even some thoughts that you might have. When your ministry experiences a big gap or failure, how do you currently respond?
Mhm.
What needs to happen or keep happening to create a ministry culture where you can all trust one another?
Mhm.
And this is a question that everybody can contribute to.
Yes.
What do you see from your perspective? Number 3, are the people in your staff or in your ministry, are there people in your staff or in your ministry that will have a difficult time trusting? And it's okay to say, yeah, I'm one of those people. But when you say I'm one of those people, guess what? I got to do the work.
Mhm.
I've got to do the work. And for what purpose? Because I want to be well. I don't want to be a victim. I
Right.
want to be a survivor. In what industry do we accept just being a victim? Medical industry? No, they're always trying to find a cure. They're always trying to find a solution. Physical therapy, medical, they're always going to try to bring you from sickness to wellness, right? And it's the same in church. We always want to be striving for wellness
Mm.
and getting well. We don't ever want to allow people to be stuck and say, well, I'm just a victim. And this is how God created me.
Mm.
No, he did not. He's offering you an on-ramp to wellness. Is it your issue or their issue or both? What do I mean by that? Sometimes our past is overshadowing, and this is so important that I didn't mention. When somebody comes to church for the first time and they start studying the Bible, it's very important that if we're going to create an environment of trust, that they understand they're coming into the church with what? Some baggage, right? And it's important that they process their baggage and not bring it into the church and immediately start having trust issues with their small group. Why are they having trust issues as a young Christian with their small group? Because of the stuff that they brought in. So we've all got to be, leaving our excess baggage at the door or processing it, or maybe giving them some help with it. And so is it both and? It most likely is a bit of both. Number 5, what can you do about your part? Good leaders always own their portion of the issue first, regardless of how big or small they think their portion is. Leadership is responsibility and ownership
Yep.
first. If I'm going to lead people, I've got to be the champion of taking responsibility. But I've also got to, not leave out and say, yeah, I'm going to do my part, but let's do this together. Let's work on this together.
Mhm.
And if it's somebody else that led before me, let's work through that, but they're no longer here.
Right.
Do you think it's fair for you to treat me as the new leader because of what your past leader did? You're going to give me a new opportunity and kind of separate the two. That's very important.
Yep.
Number 6, what needs to be addressed with them about their part? And then number 7, who do you sense has a difficult time trusting you? Why?
Hmm.
And what can you do about it?
Right.
But the biggest thing that I would say with this trustworthiness is that we're going to do our best to do what we say and be the leaders that God has called us. But the clear understanding, it doesn't mean perfection.
Right.
Okay. And it's okay to admit these are my strengths.
Yeah.
These are not. And one of the leadership qualities that was helpful for me is I want to surround myself with people who are strong in the areas that I'm not.
Mhm.
So they can help me. I'm a big picture person, visionary, but I need people around me who are detailed oriented. For example, my beautiful, wonderful wife. She's a type A. She likes the details. She helps me with that. And then in your small group, if you're leading a small group, you've got people from different skill sets to surround yourself with people who are strong in the areas that you're not. That way together, you can be strong. So we'll open it up, turn it over to you.
All right, fantastic stuff. So what we're gonna do first, before we get into Q&A and all the questions is, if you've been around me for a while, you know that I like to be able to have these times where we benefit from what the Spirit may be saying in each other's hearts and minds. And so let's have a little bit of popcorn sharing. And the sharing is what is really hitting you from this? Please don't ask any questions in that yet. Just what are you sharing? What are you feeling? Now, if you haven't accessed that yet, it's totally fine. Part of the reason why we do that is it actually helps some of the slower processors to be able to sort of access what they're really feeling. Sometimes you hear someone share and you go, that's what I'm thinking, that's what I'm feeling. It gives you a bit of an anchor point to sort of begin from there. All right, who would like to share first?
I just overall, I'm saying that trust is the key to sustaining faith.
Trust is the key to sustaining faith. Excellent. Great stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things I'm taking away is just because I come to church, I'm a Christian, we're all Christians, doesn't assume that we should all just be overwhelmingly trusting one.
Yeah.
But there is a real
Thanks.
there's real work that needs to be done.
Okay, fantastic. I really want you on for say.
Okay, I know, I'm so grateful to be here. This week I've been like wrestling with trust. And maybe it's beyond this week, the week before. And I was thinking to myself, I have come into a society that trust don't really exist. So I need to quickly calculate what degrees I put to trust and to people. And I've been wrestling with that, trying to figure out what that looks like. So I'm here now, and it's good to have that perspective and the things that I'm learning now.
Yeah, that's good. And for everyone that doesn't know, I'm really is Jamaican. A couple of years ago, was be a teacher.
Yeah, I think I'm really taking away the idea of gaps and the agency and the choice that I have of what am I going to put in the gaps where there is trust, rather than going, well, this is just how it is and reacting. But I very much have agency. I very much have choice in considering what am I going to put in this, trust or suspicion. So that's what I'm getting.
I took away from this realizing how the trauma of my past, losing my mom at 19, has played into my trust into people and even God, because I felt like he stole her from me. But also grateful for this lesson because I also still realize when I moved here in 2017 how the consistency of love and the people in this church has helped me change that and start to trust again. And so it's just a great lesson to just be reminded that, the consistency of love through people and from God will help change all of those things that you have. And so I am a witness to that. So I'm just grateful for that lesson. So yeah.
Yes. So I would like to ask for some more information about how to work with couples. I have a son and a daughter-in-law who are struggling with their marriage, and I would love to hear a little more about how maybe I could help them a little bit better than what I'm doing so far. Because right now it's like, if I go and help, it's like somebody on the other side is going to be a little upset, or maybe my wife will get upset. I choose one side, she chooses the other side. And I don't like being in the middle like that, but I would like to, try to help them build better trust with each other, my son and daughter-in-law. If you have any additional advice, I'd love to hear it.
I will reserve that for Q and A session, and that might, just so you know, Marty, that could be more of an offline, because your situation might be more specific and unique. So just keep that in mind. April.
What stood out in the first session was when you were reading the Reggie McNeil, and that after you said with trust, and when we have that agency of trust, that we can fail safely.
Yeah.
And that matters so much, to know that my family, the people that love me are gonna be around me. And when our community here, like it doesn't, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to, and we set those expectations, I think let's go with me. I set those expectations on myself and then can feel very much like worthless and hopeless when things don't go the way that I had intended. So just when you said that, I was like, yes, we get to fail safely. And then we get to be here to pick each other back up.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
Thanks for your humility. You really work hard.
Sorry.
Yeah, too. Sometimes trust culture is like, I got you back. I got your back culture. In the sense of even when I am experiencing a gap, that there's a sense of there are people, I'm in a community where people have my back. So they're letting me know. So like say if I'm, have my shirt inside out, everyone's just not like, well, So basically like someone is gonna tell me. And I feel so like, that gives me so much hope and like, okay, someone's got my back, And I think that's an amazing culture. I want to be a part of that culture, right?
Yeah, yes.
No, I know.
Oh, you didn't want to share?
No, she had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good.
Oh, my goodness.
The things I took from it were the definition of trust, putting something of great importance in someone else's hands without the means to control the outcome.
Yep,
It leaves you vulnerable.
yes,
I think that by itself is scary,
yes.
especially the part where it's out of your control. And so to put that trust into somebody and to give your heart, knowing that they could smash it, step on it, walk on it, split it, cut it, and still keep coming back. The challenge with that is this is what God does on a regular basis.
Yeah.
When you read the Bible, he keeps doing that, and there are numerous examples. You mentioned Hosea as one of the examples. I can't imagine being in a Hosea spot, doing what Hosea was asked to do. So that was great. You asked the question, does God ever stop trusting us? And I was just thinking about that question because I hadn't quite made up an answer. And then you bailed me out by talking about communion and again, the examples of Israel and how God keeps coming back. But I felt like I need to go back to and not be bailed out and just kind of, what is my answer just on my own with that? You mentioned the consequences of trusting versus being suspicious and how we have the consequences. God doesn't take those consequences away, but then how we can pass those on to our kids. And you can see those results. And then the gap, as Matt talked about, as you talked about as well. What leads me to hearing somebody say something and then waiting for the outcome of what they do, but what leads me to question or not question whether or not they'll actually do it or not? You know, if I have the freedom to trust, I mean, the freedom to trust when they say they're gonna do it, it's based off of evidence that they've done it in the past.
True.
But that suspicion is based off of evidence of them not doing it in the past. And so am I going to continue in that space to be whatever that is until they prove it? Or do I just trust that maybe this time, whether or not they will prove it or not, just to trust? And you typically see that in your relationship with your kids. Am I instilling trust? Because I trust that they'll do it this time? Or am I still in suspicion because I don't believe they'll do it this time?
Yeah.
So that was good. That was good.
Excellent. Take good notes.
Wow.
Olivia, that's it.
So I was gonna say, for me, the thing that impacted me is when you said what affects your trust level, your personality or your past. And when I heard that question, I may get a little emotional. I was filled with so much gratitude. Because I know my trauma, my past, a lot makes me a person that does not trust. But I was filled with so much gratitude because how God can transform you in your heart and help you to become a person that learns to trust.
Amen.
And so that just filled me with so much gratitude because I think years ago, I would have answered that question. Definitely, I'm a person that does not trust. And although that is at my core root that I can say with God, I am a person that probably is gone to the I trust too much now. And then the other thing was to move past your past, you have to acknowledge it and then let it pass. That was impactful to me and a great reminder that sometimes we don't want to address our past and we want to bury it and not deal with it, but we have to acknowledge it to let it pass through us so we don't hold on to it. So those were the two things that really stood out.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for having me here, Floyd. I'm from Capital Unless you don't know. So thanks for hosting us. Thank you, Pedro. There's so much I could share from what you shared today. I really like the conversation about being trustworthy, and my thoughts are still formulating, right? But two things right away is I love the emphasis on the communication part. In my own heart, I feel like I should be trusted, right? I feel like I'm trustworthy. And what humbles me is I've had the blessing of raising my kids in the church, and I see them struggling with anxiety. And I'm like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Shouldn't my kids be free of trauma? Like, they didn't, and so it's really,
Yeah.
so then I feel like if I try to approach it, what hits me is guilt and shame.
Yes.
Like, okay, that shouldn't happen. But what gives me hope from what you shared is the idea that I can approach the fact that I have created gaps in our family. I have at times not delivered. And that opening up that conversation is the way that we can address it. And so, I don't want to feel the shame, but I've got to lean into that part of it. And starting the conversation is what builds the trust and what makes me trustworthy, not the notion I have in my head that it should already exist. So I feel like that's very freeing. I don't fully get it yet, So I'd be excited if you want to say more about it.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you, Alan.
There's more.
Let's make, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You have a question? I'm sorry, you have a comment? Go ahead, sorry.
So it's a little bit off topic, but I thought I'd share this. It's a trust issue I have. It sounds a little bit funny, but it's with God. I was just on the call, the European Mission Society just now. It was unfortunately overlapped with this a little bit, but just listening to the heartfelt, emotional prayers, I think, for Ukraine. It's hard for me to digest that because I just see that, man, we all know God is in control of everything, and it's and bad things have not happened just recently. They've been going on, since the very beginning. But I think just it's coming home, to roost a little bit more, I think, in terms of what I see and, day-to-day news and stuff like that. And it's just really hard to, I think for me, it's just hard to trust God,
Yeah.
He has control of everything, but he allows, just terrible things that happen. So
Yeah.
just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Yeah, and thanks for your vulnerability. And I think you're getting into that space that is, in some ways, sacred space of learning to live with joy and sorrow and still trust. And it's hard.
Yes.
It is hard. So no simple answers to that. But I also do believe that God can help us to overcome this world in the midst of all of it and still be faithful. All right, let's make a transition. I'm sorry. Two more? I'm sorry, ladies. Go ahead.
I really appreciate this. I'm not a trustworthy person. I just feel like after I became a Christian, I became a little bit more trustworthy. But I really liked the tools that you gave, the 3 commitments. Like, oh, I can do that to be more trustworthy person, to be more trustworthy.
Thanks.
I'm gonna have a short comment. I love the lesson. Trustworthiness, I feel like is a double-sided coin. So then the suspicion comes in if I am the one, because I feel like I am a trustworthy person. I give people the benefit of the doubt because that's my love language, right? But if I am the only one doing that and you receive the suspicion back, the untrustworthiness back, and it's like if I'm the only one following the rules and you're not following the rules, then I continue to be kind of beat on. So it's kind of like it's a double-sided coin. Trust is, so if only one side is trusting and the other person is not, then what? So it's the process of that, the continuation to be like Jesus and do those things, but it's like, yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind meeting and working out things between you and April. I only can do that because they trust me. Right? I say, I just ruined it. Amen. All right, well, let's make a transition. What questions do we have? I'm going to invite Pedro to come on up once again and fire away. Go ahead.
Yeah. Is there sort of a correlation between as far as who you trust and who's more suspicious?
As far as gender,
Yeah, yeah.
I think trust and suspicion is a equal giver. Undiscriminatory.
right.
Equal opportunity.
I think it really has a lot to do with experiences. Okay, let's look at one example. Incarceration levels, men and women. It's a giant difference. But the vast majority, this goes back to how these young men were raised. And the environment that they were surrounded by was one of suspicion. And maybe not even suspicion, it was just outright accusation. You're bad, and you're gonna be bad. right out of the gate. So I just think it has a lot to do with the environment, more than it does the gender. Because I've just seen it, it's impartial. Yes.
One of the things that I strive to do.
Can I have this? Can you guys introduce yourself since Pedro doesn't know you, when you asked the question? Sorry about that, just so.
Yes, my name is April. And so, as I'm listening to you, what comes to mind is like the 4 agreements. Because that's what I try to do. I try to be impeccable with my word,
Can you tell everybody else about the 4 agreements?
So-
They may not know.
So the 4 agreements
Referring to the
are,
book, right?
yes,
Yes.
the 4 agreements are be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. So those are the things that I strive to do. And so recently I had a situation where I had a conversation with a colleague, and I came away feeling like it went one way. And then it came back to me that she, had a completely different interpretation of our interaction. And so I thought that I was just kind of spitballing or, brainstorming with a colleague, and I'm sharing, some of the challenges that I saw with the situation, and she gave her feedback, and some of it was different than mine. And I received that, like, okay, well, I didn't think about it like that. And she gave me some other ways to think about it. So I thought that we were just sort of collabing. But then it came back to me that, she felt completely different and felt like I was being resistant and I wasn't being open. And, and in my heart, I was feeling the exact opposite. And so now I don't know, like, that's the kind of thing, like, I definitely have, trauma in my past, and trust is very hard for me to do. And so when I do trust someone, it really affects me intensely when that trust is betrayed. Yeah. Because it takes a lot for me to be open and be vulnerable, because trust is not something that I give easily. So in a situation like that, I don't know now how to address this person. Do I just let it go? Do I try to have a conversation with her? Again, at the risk of it also being misinterpreted. It came back to me that maybe I remind her of this other person who used to work there and who used to, she had issues and conflicts with, but that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I appreciate this conversation and,
Yeah.
Still trying to work through some.
Yeah, I mean, what great comes to mind for me is healthy boundaries, particularly people who aren't in church. What we're talking about here is the church culture. We have a little bit more stake in good outcomes. But even then, I can't own what's not mine.
Yeah.
And I can own what's mine, if it's clear that I said something, I did something.
Right.
But if it's, if there's that hint of it could be someone else past, or just their personality and how they're, particularly if they're not a follower of Jesus, and I don't mean to discriminate with them, but I just think you're dealing with a lot of unknowns. So what I would say for all of us, when we bump up against these things, look at it as an opportunity to grow your own self-worth, your own security, that I'm trustworthy. And I went into this conversation with this intent, and I stand on that, the double stump. I stand on how I came in to that conversation. So to be secure in that.
Yes.
And I don't have to be, this doesn't have to make me feel like I'm going backwards in my trust.
Right.
No, I'm gonna be a trusting person, but obviously this situation created a need, but I'm gonna grow from it.
Amen.
But also, yeah, you may need to put a boundary there with that person, because it's a little tricky. And there's plenty of tricky people out there. And so we have to know, is this a safe place? And maybe it wasn't. I think you went into it wanting it to be safe, but found out it's not. So, proceed with caution in the future, but I think for you and your sake, grow from it. And then to decide, I'm gonna be a person of trust. and I'm gonna stand my ground, my double stomp, I'm gonna be good.
Yeah.
So that it won't trigger you to, fall back and, go backwards. That help?
Yes, I just, this is a person who I won't have to see again.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to wrestle with in my heart, not holding on to any kind of like ill will toward her or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the great scripture is, overcome evil with good.
Right.
Be extra nice to her. That's what I try to do with prickly people, is to be extra nice to them, and it helps me.
Yeah, excellent stuff. So one of the things, if you're going to interact with this person, one, I completely agree, make sure you're in a good place. And if you were in a good place, you may have an opportunity in that security, like I am a trustworthy person, to actually show curiosity so that you might be able to understand the gap between understanding. And so you can lean in and say, hey, thought we had a great conversation. I heard that you might have felt differently about that. Help me understand what you came away with, first of all, to have them say it. And then you can actually systematically go and correct misunderstandings. Say, oh, I'm so sorry. That's not the intent at all. Here's what I really meant by that. Because there's often a misunderstanding of a different understanding of what certain words mean. People. Some words are triggers. That has nothing to do with you. That's like none of your business. Like you didn't cause it. But for some people, certain words, when I hear that, So if you're in a good place, stomping, and you're good, might be able to lean in and ask those questions from a secure place. And it might give you some information that might actually create a sense of trust between you and that person. So it actually can grow. But I completely agree with Pedro in the sense that if that person is deep in suspicion, there may be nothing you can do. So just a thought.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just one more thing, I would say, thank them for coming out and giving you their, what their takeaway was.
Well, they
Because
did.
they all
I wish they had have given
don't
it.
say anything.
Yeah.
If you thank them and draw them out, and then you build on that.
My issue is that I had to hear it from someone else that she didn't come to me.
That's the
That-
Yeah, that's
the
That
part.
really was very hurtful.
Yeah,
for
that's
me.
the part. All right, thank you. That's great.
I want-
All right.
So, thank you though.
Other questions?
Yeah, one more question. Okay, so in a situation where you're talking to someone, for instance, your children, and they misremember a situation and they want you to take ownership of something that is not yours, and you're like, that never happened. Or you say a word and they extrapolate a whole situation, and you like, I never use any of those words. For instance, I can do this, and you make a suggestion, and they say, you said you can't do this, and it become, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not the crazy one here. So just some advice. I know you talked to you talked about your children, but it's like, it's something to ownership. I'm like, yeah, I can't own that because you're a little psychotic, and that's just what it is. Like, my memory's good. Like, I'm not that old. Like, so I'm just if you could provide what we can accept, what we can, I just need some, whatever you have to say.
So I think first, words matter
Correct.
in those interactions. So it's very important. If you want to, especially with your children, you want to create safety for them to talk to you. And also, I would say in a leadership role in the church, you want to create safe spaces. I've had people come at me with stuff that I know is overdone, not healthy. And I go, okay, I'm going to help them process whatever they're feeling, but I don't have to take it personally.
Yeah, it's hard with your kids. You'd be like,
Yeah, and I think with your kids, I think creating a safe place for them to talk about their feelings, even though they're not completely based in truth.
yeah,
But you want the relationship. Right.
adult children, yes.
Yes, you want the relationship. So you have to kind of put things in categories.
Okay.
I care more about the relationship than I care about fact finding,
Okay.
right?
Good point.
And then I think at the proper time, you can have the discussion.
Yeah.
On I didn't see things the way that you said them. I'm open because I care about this connection. But let's talk more about that because I didn't see what you were saying as I remember it, you know? And then, but I would not get caught up in a back and forth because it's not worth it. I care more about the relationship. And then, for your sake, just offer it up to God. Okay, God, if I hurt them in this way, help me to own it. I don't remember it that way. I didn't see it that way. And also I would say with our children, man, it's a sensitive subject. It can really trigger us to feel things stronger.
Yeah.
And make us emotional. Right? Because it's a deeper level of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Right? So recognize that. I think it requires a great deal of self-awareness. My emotions, this is bubbling up. This is bringing up some stuff in me,
Absolutely.
So I think just recognizing that and then be careful with your words and your reactions.
Yeah.
Because, it can go sideways really quick.
Yes.
And I know, because my kids can push my buttons better than anybody. So that's what I would say is try to care more about the relationship than maybe the facts. I'm in this so we can have a good relationship. So let's talk it through. Let's have some discussion. Can we agree not to agree? Can we agree to disagree?
I asked him that and he's like, oh, no, I hear what you're saying. I'm like, yeah.
And honestly, at a certain age with kids, I mean, for me, with my parents, I went through a transformation that I was very critical of them up until a certain age, and then everything flipped.
This too shall pass.
The gratitude, that I had for my parents.
Right.
So you got to kind of wait on that transition.
Okay.
Because man, there's a mental illness. That happens between the age of like 13. And for girls, it's maybe 21. For boys, it's 24, 25.
Maybe 28.
Maybe. But just knowing that, being the older adult, knowing that they may not have a healthy view of you.
Yeah.
But again, that double stomp for yourself. That I trust God and I want to be in a good place.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this with, I don't know if that helps.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, as a small leader or being with people in the God's church, you meet with people and for the first time, they have put trust in someone and they're coming with all of this stuff, right? And you do the best with what you've got to help them. And then you realize you're at this point where like, this is not the help I can provide you. You need clinical help, right? And I'm so grateful that the church has really taken on in recent years, like, yes, you need professional help that this is beyond just, I'm going to help you have a great relationship with God. However, part of this goes into setting the boundaries, like being a trustworthy person also makes you a dependable person. And a lot of dependability gets put on you to help people navigate these steps as they go, even if they take the profession, right?
Right.
How do we help people see that they've got to do the work themselves? And how do we get them to transition from leaning on, let's say, leaning on me and actually going and seeking that professional help?
Yeah. So your question ties in with, what was your name? Martin. So I think it's very important for Martin and your question is, when you know somebody needs more help than I can provide, or if I'm in a dual relationship with that person, I mean, I'm your small group leader.
Right.
I'm not your therapist.
Right. Right.
I am a therapist, but not in my church.
Right.
Because that's a dual relationship. So I will refer people out. I am your father. I am not your therapist.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm your small group leader. I'm gonna stay in my lane.
Right, right.
I'm a facilitator of a group and
Correct.
relationships. And this is what we did in the past. Our church culture
Mm.
could become very codependent,
Yeah,
right? It can foster a codependent environment.
Right.
We have to stay away from codependency.
right.
And even, establishing clear roles. Okay, I'm here to be a facilitator, a friend, a group leader. But this is kind of and when you go through your training in small group leadership, that's a great time to talk about those boundaries. But yes, I think it's fine to encourage people. But therapy means that's your safe place to talk about all your stuff. If you choose to bring some of that and share with the group, I don't recommend it. Because that's where you go to. One of the things that I loved about therapy was I could talk about anything and everything in a safe space
Yeah,
that nobody else needed to know about, confidentiality. And so just to respect that. So I would encourage them, that is their space to work on themselves. But this is a limited space where we work on spirituality. We don't work on those things that are probably higher level. And I remember talking to our church in California is we are not a full service church.
right.
What I mean by full service is we don't do everything.
No, don't.
This is what we do.
Mhm.
Okay, we provide great relationships, family feel, spirituality, brotherhood, camaraderie, community, tools for growing. But we don't, in some places, they don't work on substance abuse.
Right,
In some churches, they don't have that ability, so they need to go somewhere to get that.
right.
Or mental health, they need to go somewhere and get that. So I think being clear on that. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think for you as a leader is know your role, know your place, and be okay with saying, that's not my role. That's not my place. And I don't even want to get into that because I'm unqualified. As a therapist, I wasn't trained, and it's something I'd like to get into, but I wasn't trained in substance abuse. Because that's a whole different
Yeah.
training, accreditation, certification. So if I had somebody that had co-occurring problems, substance abuse and mental health, I have to refer them out. And just say, no, I can't, I'm not qualified to help you. And I think that's okay for you to say. And I'm spending a little time because I think a lot of people could use this.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Rodney,
Got that spinach out?
yes,
Spinach out. That,
yeah, so maybe
as people of God, like I can meet all of your needs where you are, right? And then part of that is like that, I guess, my own personal issues and feeling of guilt of not being the person of Jesus that they need in the moment. But and so I'm thank you for that. It's helping me to define like these boundaries. Like, look, I can still love you and care for you as Jesus would, but for you to actually be healthy and whole, you need to go here. And
Yeah. Amen.